Humans have tails. Okay, that sounds weird, I know, but it's true. While our bodies are still forming in the womb, at around day 31 to 35, you can really start to see it. Right now, you have a tail. It's inside you. It's part of your coccyx, to be more precise. If you were to have an X-ray right now and ask the doctor to show you your tail, you'd see some small bony segments at the bottom of your spine. We lost our tails over many millennia of evolution. Imagine if we still had our tails. They'd have to redesign pants. Maybe they'd have a special hole or even a tail pocket. Sitting might be a bit uncomfortable too, to say the least. Our ancestors also had fur. We lost it about 1.2 million years ago. You might be thinking that we still have fur in the form of our body hair, but that's nothing compared to what we used to have. We were thickly furred like chimpanzees and gorillas are now because we needed it to stay warm. You might be annoyed that we lost it if you live somewhere freezing cold like Alaska. Still, you could look at it the other way. Losing our fur lets us enjoy the warm weather a bit more. Living in larger groups meant we shared stuff, and not all of it was positive. It's possible that humans with less hair or fur would get sick less often because they didn't have as many parasites on them, like lice or ticks. This might be the reason why we evolved to lose our fur and become what you see today. Although I have to admit, more body warmth would come in very handy right now. I wouldn't need to keep this blanket on my legs anymore. Oh, not again. Let me just grab a cup of water to make these hiccups go away. Ah, much better. Okay, in reality, it's not that easy to stop hiccuping. But why is it so hard to stop them? Well, it could be because of a strange feature of a past evolution. One theory is that hiccups have no real use anymore, and that we actually only do it because we come from amphibians. They had both lungs and gills at the same time. When they went underwater, the entryway or glottis to their lungs would close. Fast forward to today, and we still have that mechanism of closing the glottis, but it's useless because we don't live in the water. Wow, how unfair. If we have to get frustrated by hiccups, we should at least be able to get some use out of it. Picture this. You start getting the hiccups, and it's like a superpower. You stop breathing through your lungs and start using some gills. That'd be something else, especially for anyone who really likes swimming. Most of our teeth fit pretty much perfectly in our mouth, but there are 4 of them who arrive late to the party and ruin everything. I'm talking about wisdom teeth. They serve no real purpose, but humans and a few primates have them. However, lucky species like the tamarins don't have to worry about them. About 35% of people don't even have wisdom teeth. We might be on our way to losing them altogether once and for all. No more going to the dentist on a mission to remove them, no more headaches from them either. In Ireland, there are a lot of people with red hair, like really a lot, upwards of 30%. That's a lot of redheads out there. This is a result of genetic drift. Genetic drift is when a feature is passed on from your ancestors without really having any purpose. This is exactly why some people have red hair. So, if you have red hair, there's no real reason for it, it's just your ancestors from a past age who passed on to another member of your family and eventually you. And I think red hair is incredibly fun and attractive. Inside our mother's womb, 16 weeks in, we get a powerful urge to grasp the umbilical, and so we do. Monkeys do this too, and there's a reason for it. It's because when they're out in the wild, they need to hold on to their parents' fur. Humans used to do this, but since we lost all of our fur, there's no reason for us to develop this involuntary grasping called the palmar grasp reflex. Open wide and say, "Ah." Good, I can see your tonsils now. But what are they even used for? If we take a good look at it, they actually cause more problems than benefits. Tonsils appeared as a way to protect us from germs and other nasty stuff when we eat food. Still, more often than not, all they do is give us a horrible sore throat. Because of this, it's really common for people to get rid of them. Picture a little pouch. We have one of these inside our body. Not exactly like this, but an organ that sort of resembles a pouch, our appendix. Scientists used to think it was completely useless, but recently found that it might actually have some use. Still, like tonsils, it often causes more problems than benefits. People commonly have their appendix removed and face no real consequences, so it can't be that important. It might have helped our ancestors in the past, but issues with the appendix can be a real big stomachache. Okay, you know how some people can weirdly move their ears? Like this. I can't do it. You might be able to, though. Try it for yourself. Some of us can do this because, like other animals, we have a muscle called the auricular muscle, but it's useless for us. Cats, on the other hand, control their ears pretty well. If only we could learn from them. They look forwards and listen out for a noise behind them without moving their heads, just their ears. That's a pretty cool skill if you ask me. Stretch your arm as far as you can, your hand too. Now connect your thumb with your pinky finger. You might see a line appear on your wrist. What you're seeing is called the palmus longus, and about 90% of the world's population has it. Statistically speaking, it's likely that you have it too. Back then, our ancestors needed every bit of help they could get to climb trees and grasp things. But when we started walking, it made these muscles completely useless. Monkeys, on the other hand, still climb trees easily. They have a muscle in their feet called the plantaris muscle, also known as the monkey muscle. Now, we have this too, except we don't really need it because we don't go around doing any monkey business. Like the palmaris longus, about 10% of people are born with it. Chances are, if monkeys are hanging from a branch, that's the muscle they're using. If you're getting that late-night urge for food at 3 a.m., it's because of hunger. You probably already knew that, but what you don't know is that hunger evolved as a trigger to drive us to search for more food. So, if you still got a few extra pounds you're trying to get rid of, you know what to do. Blame it on evolution! Our hungriest ancestors would have tried harder to look for food and survived to pass that trait on to us. Our love of sugary snacks, like delicious chocolate cookies and milk, is because of evolution too. Our taste buds evolved just as hunger did to help us find food that's beneficial to us. You're out for a walk and get hit with a chilly breeze. You're only wearing a t-shirt, so you decide to go back home. You get into your house with chattering teeth and realize that you've got goosebumps too. We get this from our furry ancestors. When it was cold, they would get goosebumps and their fur would stand on end. This would trap air and insulate their bodies like a nice fluffy coat. We don't have fur anymore, so it doesn't do much. Evolution also explains why you might get goosebumps when you're scared. Picture this: you're a caveman out in the wild when suddenly a tiger jumps out at you. It starts growling at you. No worries, your hair stands on end and you look giant. The big pointy fur intimidates the tiger, so it runs off. Or you have the alternative ending, where the tiger doesn't care and eats you anyway. Maybe that's why we lost the fur, because it didn't work all the time. We don't actually need 5 toes. You're doing the laundry and your hands are full. Oh, you dropped a towel. What do? You pick it up with your feet, of course. This is possible because of our 5th toe, but we could do without it. Since we walk upright and we don't need to go around jumping from branch to branch, this toe is mostly useless. We can walk and even run just fine with 4 toes, maybe even less. So who knows, maybe in the future, humans will only have 4 toes on each foot. Okay, look at yourself in the mirror. Yeah, right in the eye. See that little fold of tissue in the inner corner of both of your eyes? Well, get ready for this. It was actually once a third eyelid, or nictitating membrane. You can see it today in snakes or lizards, for example. The third eyelid was used for the same purpose as the other 2, although it's unclear whether humans ever even had it fully grown. This membrane wasn't as thick as the 2 eyelids we have, and it could moisten the eye without obstructing the view. Right now, all we have left of it is this tiny fold in the corner of the eye, and most likely in the future we will lose it altogether. And maybe we'll finally stop waking up with that yucky crust that forms in our eyes overnight. Now, while you're still in front of the mirror, look lower. Lower, and lower still. Yeah, those are your toes. Say hello and goodbye. Scientists believe that, in some more or less distant future, we'll get rid of our toes completely. Our ancestors, the ancient primates, needed toes to climb trees more efficiently. They used both their hands and feet to grab tree branches. You can see it today in most monkeys and apes. They have longer and more flexible toes, along with flappier feet that allow them to get a hang on branches. Their feet mobility also lets them grab objects from the ground if necessary. For us humans, even lifting a pen we dropped on the floor with our toes is a complex task, but not for our primate relatives. Humans have evolved along a different route. We started walking upright and climbed down from trees, making rigid feet and shorter toes more of a necessity over time. Today, we still use our toes for balance when rolling from the balls of our feet to the tips of the toes, but our balance is now much more centered. It first moved towards our inner feet, which resulted in our pinky toes becoming so tiny, and the big toes, well, so big. As the balance moves away from the toes entirely, though, they're more likely to get fused together in the future. Now, turn around and look at your gorgeous behind. If you've ever fallen off a skateboard or slipped on an icy patch, you must remember what a terrible thing it is to hit that tailbone on a hard surface. Luckily for us, scientists predict it's going to go away pretty soon in the course of evolution. A tailbone is a feature that was left to us by our primate ancestors too. And yet again, they needed their tails to achieve more mobility among tree branches, using them to fling themselves from tree to tree. It's hard to say when humans drop the tail to never pick it back up, but facts are facts. The only thing we have reminding us of those glorious tree-jumping days is the pretty useless bone at the lower end of our backs. Okay, back to the face now. Open your mouth and say, "Ah." If you're a lucky individual to have no wisdom teeth, then you can be proud knowing that you're a product of evolution going strong. As you might know, teeth are the only part of the human body that doesn't repair itself. So, if you lost all your teeth back in the dark times with no dentists around, the only choice you had was to eat liquid food. Not cool. Dentists believe that nature gave us wisdom teeth as a replacement for old, worn-out teeth we've had since childhood. That's why they grow so late in our lives. Today, though, with all the progress dentistry has gone through, we tend to keep all or most of our teeth intact until a very old age. And even if we lose some, we can always replace them with new ones. That makes wisdom teeth a vestigial thing. And they seem to understand that, since more and more people never have to go through the ordeal of teething as grown-ups. Speaking of teeth, our entire jaw has been changing for the past, 10,000 years, and is predicted to change even more quite soon. In fact, it's been the fastest changer of all our body parts. Back in the day, when early humans survived by hunting and gathering, they needed massive, powerful jaws and bigger teeth to chew through raw meat and grind plants. As they came to cooking and then farming, their food became less tough, and so their jaws became smaller to fit the current needs. As time went by, our jaws shrank more and more, and they're likely to continue doing so in the future. With lots of processed foods that don't need much chewing, humans of the future are probably going to have more delicate facial features with thin jaw lines and smooth cheekbones. Some body parts are not going away, but making a comeback instead. 100 years ago, fibula, a tiny bone in the back of the knee, was only present in around 11% of people, and scientists thought it would disappear entirely pretty soon. But, against all odds, the brave little bone has made it into the knees of a whopping 39% of modern people. It's still unknown why exactly the fibula returned, but the most popular opinion is that we've grown taller and heavier than our ancestors. That much is true. As our diet became better and more nutritious, we learned to live longer and grow taller. We're now probably at the peak of our evolutionary height. And the fibula might have appeared in our bodies to provide a smooth surface for the tendon behind the knee to slide on, reducing friction and lowering the chances of damage because of wear and tear. Speaking of becoming bigger, let's get you back to that mirror, shall we? Flex a little bit. Ooh, nice biceps there. But unfortunately, not as nice as your ancient ancestors were. Not everything about evolution is 100% good for us. It's just a set of features that adapted best. And that's the case with our muscles. They've grown smaller and weaker with time, especially in our upper bodies. In ancient times, humans needed big and strong muscles to do a lot of handiwork. From hunting and schlepping their catch home to crafting tools and building shelters. Later, it didn't grow easier. Much the opposite. In fact, plowing fields and building complex structures required a lot of physical strength and endurance. But as the technological progress started booming, physical capabilities gave way to brain power. And machines began doing a lot of work for us, most of it even better than us. We shifted more towards sedentary lifestyle, spending more and more time in front of computers. And our muscles have been growing steadily smaller because we simply don't need them as much anymore. It's highly likely that as the progress goes further, we'll become much slenderer and have more trouble gaining muscle mass. Our brain is of particular interest because it's been changing in a kind of a strange pattern. Our distant ancestors had a rather small brain at first, but the close relatives of humans, the Neanderthals, obtained a larger brain than the average modern human has. In the course of evolution, human brain grew larger. But in the more recent centuries, it started shrinking, and no one knows exactly why. Some experts say it might have to do with the change of our lifestyle and social connections. Early humans, especially hunter-gatherers, had to remember every plant and animal they saw, their properties, and how to use this or that thing. They were more generalist, having to learn everything their parents knew and find out more on their own. The modern human is more specialized in a certain area, delving deeper into some narrow subject while relying on their peers for the rest. Where ancient humans worked in groups in which anyone could potentially replace anyone else, we gather in teams, where each member has their own specific task and is irreplaceable. Still, brain size doesn't seem to matter that much, because orcas and elephants, for example, have bigger brains than us, which doesn't make them more intelligent. Happier? I'm guessing yes. And if we venture further into the unknown, meaning millennia from today, we might even develop some pretty unbelievable traits. Some go as far as to say that if the tendency for the sea levels to rise persists, humans might adapt to living in water. We might evolve to have webbed hands and feet to swim better, and develop gills to be able to breathe underwater. Or, if we go into space and start colonizing other planets, we will inevitably have to adapt to their conditions. Mars, for instance, has lower gravity and a much colder climate. It will probably make humans taller and lighter, but also may cause them to grow much more body hair to keep warm. And planets with stronger gravity and higher temperatures will, on the contrary, turn humans into stocky, sturdy, and likely hairless creatures. The possibilities are endless. Hey, maybe due to social media, we'll just turn into little blobs with big eyes and thumbs and not much else. So much better for texting. Hope not.
Your body actually glows. It emits a super faint light that's at its strongest at around 3 to 4 p.m. The sad news is that this glowing is 1,000 times less intense than what your eyes can see. Humans are the only animals that have chins. Even our closest genetic relatives, gorillas and chimps, lack this small piece of bone that extends forward from the jaw. Their lower jaws slant down and back from their front teeth. Scientists still haven't figured out this mystery. The opinions about why people are made this way differ. Some researchers think chins help us chew our food. Others are sure they have something to do with speaking. A few of us think it's simply a special place to grow a goatee. The most abundant element in the human body is oxygen at 65%, but it also contains lithium, cobalt, gold, and uranium. The rarest one of all is radium. On average, humans yawn 20 times a day, partially spontaneously, for example, when you're tired, but sometimes when someone yawns near you. Scientists think it could be a thing called social mirroring. Usually, when animals mimic each other, they recognize some action as useful, so they decide to do it too. With humans, it happens when someone crosses legs, laughs, smiles at you, or your stomach acid breaks down the foods you eat and turns them into easy-to-digest particles. It also stops nasty pathogens and microbes that could make you sick. In fact, your stomach acid is so strong that it can even dissolve bone and metal. Don't start munching down on your soda cans, though. That's probably not going to end well. Your brain has more than 86 billion nerve cells. They're all joined together by 100 trillion connections. That's even more than the number of stars in the Milky Way galaxy. There's a good chance you can guess someone's name based on how they look. Researchers showed portrait photos to a group of people with 4 names written below. They were asked to choose the right name for this or that person. The law of chance says you'll guess it 25% of the time, but in this research, people got the names correct at a rate of 25 to 40%, and there were more than 94,000 faces shown. Let's say a man is called Bob. People will expect for him to have a rounder face than Tim. They expect Bob to be more jolly and ready to hang out with people. It has to affect his facial appearance in some way. A woman called Catherine can be considered more serious, studious, and concentrated. That could eventually influence her facial muscles as well. When ancient Romans flexed their biceps, they thought their muscles looked like mice. That's why the word muscle translates as little mouse in Latin. Your left lung is smaller than the right one because it shares space with your heart. Experts used to think that we can only distinguish 10,000 smells. In fact, a recent study found human beings can recognize 1 trillion smells. Millennials, or people born between 1981 and 1996, are more forgetful than older people. The main cause of their forgetfulness comes from higher levels of stress. So come on, dude, chill out, okay? Some scientists think that the purpose of fingerprints is a better grip, but others believe they're there to help wick water off them and allow the skin to stretch when needed to protect it from damage. There's also a theory saying that fingerprints improve the sense of touch. Hot coffee can taste better than cold coffee. Your taste bud receptors are most sensitive when your food is at or a little bit above room temperature. Hot coffee can then seem less bitter because taste buds that detect bitterness are more sensitive when the coffee is cold. The biggest molecule in the human body is the chromosome 1. A human cell has 23 chromosome pairs, and each chromosome 1 is made of 10 billion atoms. You inhale 25 sextillion molecules in just one breath. That's 25 followed by 21 zeros. When you're walking faster, at some point, you'll feel the natural urge to start jogging. Your body wants to have a stable state, whether you're running or walking. So, if you're walking fast, it will unconsciously force you to start running. One theory is, we use more energy when walking faster than running, so that's one of the ways the body saves energy. Your pinky is a powerful little thing. Without it, your hand would lose a significant part of its power. Your index and middle fingers cooperate with your thumb to grab and pinch, and your pinky, together with your ring finger, provides grip strength. The fattiest organ in your body is your brain. Fat makes up at least 60% of its dry weight. This quality got the brain to the Guinness World Records. The organ contains around 25% of your body's cholesterol, which is vital for the brain's well-being. Your bones are 4 times harder than concrete. The strongest bone in your body is the femur. It can support up to 30 times the weight of a grown-up person. Even crazier is that our bones are made up of composite material, meaning they're both hard and elastic at the same time. Your fingernails grow twice as fast as your toenails. It would take 15.5 months for your toenails to grow 1 inch, but only 7 months for your fingernails to get this long. The outer layer of your skin is thicker on your feet than on other parts of your body. The heart has its own electrical system and can continue beating even when it's disconnected from the body. The vessels in your body are long enough to circle the earth twice or more. The idea that we use only 10% of our brains is a myth. At any given time, you use almost 100%. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to perform simple tasks, like drink a cup of coffee. More than 70% of your brain consists of water, and it needs 20% of your body's oxygen supply. The average lifespan of one eyebrow hair is 4 months. The body of a 110-pound person contains 40 tablespoons of salt. If you ironed out all the wrinkles in your brain and laid it flat, it would be the size of a pillowcase. The brain wrinkles as there's not a lot of room in the skull, so it folds over itself as it grows. By the way, don't do that pillowcase thing with your brain. Trust me on this one. We spend 40% of our life with our eyes closed. Most of that time is when we're asleep. But don't forget to count blinking too, or while driving. You produce around 85,000 pints of spit in your lifetime. That's enough saliva to fill around 500 bathtubs. Enough said. The highest blood flow isn't actually in your heart, and it's not in your brain either. It's in your kidneys. It's super hard for us to grasp just how small an atom is. But think of it this way. Your body is made up of a staggering 7 octillion atoms. Yeah, doesn't that look like a 7 being chased by a whole mob of zeros? For adults, the blood makes up 7 to 8% of the total body weight. About 55% of your blood is liquid plasma. The rest is red and white blood cells and platelets. They form clots and prevent bleeding. You can't swallow and breathe at the same time. The food you swallow and the air you breathe go down the same part of your throat at first. Only a bit deeper does the passage split into the esophagus, for food and liquid, and the trachea, for air. When you swallow, your airway gets automatically closed off. This prevents you from accidentally inhaling food. But occasionally, it still happens. There's a name for the growling sound that your stomach makes when you're hungry. It's called borborygmi. It takes 6 to 8 hours for food to travel through your stomach and small intestine. That's because your body is trying to absorb all its nutrients. The idea that the tongue has flavor zones is a myth. All taste buds can detect 5 tastes, but some receptors are more responsive than others. Human beings are the only animals that willingly delay sleep. Just make sure you get enough.
Almost all of our body is covered with hairs, even if we don't notice them. They grow even in the belly button. Their purpose is to catch lint. Check it out, see? A single human hair can support 3.5 ounces of weight. That's how much 2 candy bars weigh. Our hair color is easily explained by genes. There's not more than 2% of people with natural red hair. They're followed by blondes and by all the varieties of brown shades. The vast majority goes to black hair, including very dark brown. Yeah, your hair can stop growing at a certain length. A hair usually grows from 2 to 7, so usually it doesn't exceed 42 inches. Well, tell that to this gal from China, who broke all the hair records with the longest hair ever. In 2004, her hair was 18 feet, 5.5 inches long. With age, your hair loses its natural color. It happens because keratin receives less pigment. As people grow older, the pigment cells in their hair follicles gradually vanish, and hair becomes gray. Some time passes and no pigment is produced at all. That's when hair turns white. The only part of the human body that doesn't get any nutrients from blood is the cornea of the eye. Instead, it's fed by tears and fluid in front of your eyes. A human eye has some resemblances to a car engine. They both need various liquids to perform properly. An engine needs gasoline and an eye needs tears. In order to work well, the tears should be thoroughly distributed all over the eye. That's why we blink up to 20,000 times a day. So, a lid is a bit of a windshield washer. We've got 2 really fast muscles. They control the eyelid closing. They're the fastest muscles in our body. Eyes are fragile and need protection. That's why when the reflex is triggered, these muscles shut the eyes within about 100 milliseconds, no more than 0.1 seconds. We recognize only purple-blue, green-yellow, and yellow-red colors. Everything else is a combination of these 3. It's impossible to calculate how many of these combinations the human eye sees because every single person has slight vision differences. But it's about 1/1,000,000th combinations on average, you see? The inability to distinguish colors, also known as color blindness, affects around 8% of males and 0.5% of females. But colors themselves aren't as stable and objective as they might seem. Multiple tests have shown that people experience colors differently, depending on many factors such as geographical location, language, and gender, to name a few. It means that you can enjoy the same sunset with your friend and see completely different colors without even knowing it. Just like fingerprints, your eye color is unique. It can even affect the way you perceive light and make your vision one of a kind. To understand how this is possible, you gotta figure out how the eye color is formed. This is the iris, the colored part of the eyeball. The iris contains pigmentation, and its content determines what eye color you have. Every human has a slightly different amount of pigmentation. That's why you won't find two people with identical eye colors. 3 specific genes in your body are responsible for melanin levels and determine pigmentation. Blue and green-eyed people have less melanin in their iris, and those who have more melanin have darker eye colors, like brown and hazel. Some rare people have beautiful, deep black eyes, but this is only an optical illusion caused by the abundance of melanin. Pure black iris doesn't exist in nature. Although these eyes look very dark, they're actually dark brown. Studies have proved that eye pigmentation impacts your vision. No matter how dark or light your eye color is, people with lighter eye colors are more sensitive to light, which may cause them to feel uncomfortable on sunny days. If you have a light eye color and have to squint when you go outside, don't forget to put on sunglasses. Your irises contain less pigment that serves as protection from the sun's rays. But since melanin acts like natural sunglasses, you have better night vision compared to dark-eyed people. On the contrary, if you have a darker eye color, your eyes can cope with bright light better during the daytime. Dark-eyed people should feel more confident while driving at night because they don't get blinded by car headlights that much. Your peripheral vision is almost completely black and white. It's because you have more color-detecting cones in the center of your retina than at the sides. Women can distinguish more colors than men because they have 2 X chromosomes, and men only have 1. Even if something is wrong with one of the chromosomes, a woman can still see colors correctly. That's why women are rarely colorblind. There must be at least some photos where you have red eyes. When the camera flash goes off, your eyes aren't prepared for such an influx of light. Your pupils remain dilated, which is why the light gets reflected off the red blood cells of the choroid. This is a layer of tissue at the back of your eye that nourishes your retina. The weird-looking flies you see right in front of your eyes every now and then are eye floaters. You see them because of tiny structural imperfections in one particular part of the eye that gets in the way of light. They get worse with age. You spend 10% of the time when you're awake with your eyes closed. It's all those times you're blinking. Humans are capable of using echolocation like bats and dolphins. With some training, you can find your way in complete darkness, analyzing the surroundings by sounds bouncing off objects. Don't need to practice that. About 6% of people can vibrate and rapidly shake their eyeballs back and forth. It doesn't mean something's not right with their eyes, it's just a unique trick they can perform. The main purpose of eyelashes is to shield your eyes and protect them from sand, moisture, dust, and debris in the air. Your eyelashes sense when something comes up too close to your eyes, like an insect flying towards you, and trigger your blink reflex. Blinking also helps when you need to flush out some tiny particles or debris stuck in your puncta. Those are small openings you have in your eyelids. That's where the tears get pumped out. Your eyebrows stop sweat from running directly into your eyes. Your skin there and the shape of your bones also work together to direct the sweat towards the sides of your face. Onions produce a special chemical irritant. It stimulates special glands in your eyes, causing them to release tears. The nose is probably one of the most underappreciated parts of the body. We wouldn't even be able to enjoy eating without it. About 80% of the taste of any food is thanks to the nose and its ability to recognize odors. If you hold your nose while eating, you will taste almost nothing. With no sense of smell, you're likely to recognize food mostly by texture, so an onion might seem no different than a big, refreshing apple. Scientists used to believe we could distinguish about 10,000 smells, but they were wrong. Recent research showed that people are actually able to distinguish between more than 1 trillion smells. We also remember them better than anything else, and smells can even evoke some distant memories. Your nose doesn't just help you breathe and catch odors, it filters the air for sensitive throats and lungs. If we inhale dry air, the nose moistens it, cools it, and heats it if necessary. Also, the nose cleans the air of dirt. Your nostrils don't work with the same efficiency all the time. When you breathe, one nostril does most of the work, and they switch every couple of hours. 18% of people can move both ears at the same time, while 22% can move one ear at a time. People who can do it use weak vestigial muscles we got from our ancestor humans, who had this trait in common with cats. Some people can produce a roaring noise in their heads. All they have to do is tense their ears or jaws. There's a small muscle in the ear. It dampens loud sounds, like when you're chewing. But some people can flex that muscle, and that creates an audible rumble. Your teeth are the only part of your body that cannot heal itself.
Human feet. You know, those sometimes smelly things at the end of your legs? Yeah, those. Well, those are adapted to support us while walking upright. So the bones and ligaments in there are quite rigid. But some people have floppier feet that might indicate our ancestry. A study in nearly 400 people showed that about 1 out of 13 had them like that. Primates use their feet like we use our hands. They climb trees with agility. So they need to have floppy feet to do it efficiently. But humans from 2 million years in the past also had less rigid feet. Scientists believe studying people with this rare bone structure may help understand how ancient humans walked, and also whether this floppiness actually helps in climbing too. Now, our height, the shape of our body, and skin color depend on where our ancestors used to live. But we can adapt to new conditions even within our own lifespan. For example, if you move from plains to the mountains, you'll eventually develop more red blood cells to compensate for the lack of oxygen. And naturally, if you move from a colder climate to a hotter and sunnier one, your skin will get pigmented to adapt. Now, a second pair of arms would come in handy in a lot of situations. But an extra pair of fingers might be helpful too. About 1 in every 500 people is born with 6 digits on either hand. In most cases, the extra fingers are considered useless and removed. But research has shown that those who've left them could do lots of everyday things with just one hand, like tying their shoelaces or playing video games with game pads. Okay, how many fingers am I holding up now? About 1 in 25,000 people are born with the thumbs on their hands having 3 flanges instead of the usual 2, giving their hands a very extraordinary look. And when it happens in combinations with 6 fingers, which isn't too rare by the way, the picture is even more cryptic. Such a condition doesn't bring much discomfort. In fact, some actions are even easier done with a thumb that has an extra flange. Like thumbing your nose, perhaps. It's been believed for a long time that a person could distinguish more than 10,000 smells. Some research done not long ago showed that people were able to distinguish more than 1 trillion smells. We also remember them better than anything else, and smells can even evoke some distant memories. Like with Grandpa and the big baked bean party when you were a kid. We can accidentally digest small objects such as plastic items, glass, coins, and many other small objects. They'll make their way through the digestive tract within 48 hours. And there's even a man who managed to eat a whole airplane. Now, it took him years though, but little by little, he finished his metal meal with no trouble at all. I had a joke here about passing a landing gear, but yeah, I'll skip that one. Now, every person has their unique smell that can't be confused with anyone else's. It's exactly the same mechanism that allows other animals to find members of their family in packs and distinguish them from strangers. Still, if you have an identical twin, you will both have almost the same smell. Scientists found that body odors of identical twins are 10 times more similar than those of unrelated people. Unfortunately, a well-trained dog would still easily distinguish you two. Now, most people have 3 types of cones in their eyes, allowing us to see millions of colors. Women typically see more shades, but sometimes they see so much more that they're literally unable to comprehend the difference. That's thanks to a 4th cone in their eyes that enhances their vision 100-fold. And what's more, the number of women born with this extra cone is about 12%, But only a few of them can actually use it because in most cases it remains inactive. Now, imagine falling from the roof of a 10-story building and getting away with a few bruises and scratches, but no broken bones whatsoever. Such a genetic anomaly was discovered back in 1994, and it is associated with the LRP5 gene. It makes a person's bones about 8 times denser than normal, which basically makes them almost indestructible. There's a whole extended family in Connecticut that has this mutation, and all 20 members of it have extraordinarily dense bones. Scientists who did research of the blood samples of this family say they have the strongest skeletons in the world. Many people think that a cleft chin is a sign of a strong and independent character, but it's really a gene mutation which results when the bones or muscles in the lower jaw don't fuse completely during development inside the womb. Just like many other anomalies, it's hereditary, which means, yes, you can blame your parents. However, if a person has a cleft chin, it doesn't necessarily mean that their offspring will have it too, because environmental factors in the womb or the presence of modifier genes that influence other genes, can prevent it. There are no two identical brains in the world. Brain structure highly depends on conditions in which it develops and grows. And so, we all have something individual to us even on a biological level. And just like your fingers, your tongue too has a unique print on it that won't be like any other in the world. Nah, let's not compare tongues. A less impressive but not less rare condition is the so-called double crown. A crown is that patch of hair on top of your head that goes in a spiral. It's pretty hard to miss if you have short hair, especially because it's the hardest part to smooth down. People normally have one, but there are individuals unlucky enough to have two, and double the smoothing trouble. Still, some believe having a double crown is, on the contrary, a sign of good luck or even high intelligence. On a similar note, you ever wake up and look at your tousled hair with frustration? And now imagine having this disheveled look forever and not being able to do anything about it. It's called the uncombable hair syndrome. Your hair's always sticking out every which way, and no amount of water or hair gel can tame it. Heterochromia makes your eyes 2 different colors, say one hazel and the other blue. It has to do with the levels of melanin in your body, a pigment that affects the colors of your skin, hair, and, yes, your eyes. There's also partial heterochromia, which is only a part of one of your eyes is differently colored. It's not too common in humans, but I'll bet you've seen it in dogs, huskies in particular. This breed is naturally predisposed to this condition, and it looks super cool. Now, the rarest genetic condition there probably is, called the golden blood, can be a lifesaver for millions of people. There are just 40 known carriers of this blood type in the world. They don't have any Rh blood cell antigens, which means anyone can accept their blood, even those with extremely rare blood types. And although their blood isn't golden in color, it's certainly worth more than just gold. Now, turn your arm palm up on some flat surface and touch your pinky and thumb together. Now, look at your wrist. Do you see a muscle getting tense under your skin there? If you don't, that's okay. It only means you're in about 10% of people who don't have the palmaris longus. It's a muscle that scientists believe used to be useful for hanging and gripping in our ancestors. In modern humans, though, it has no real value, so we're evolving to drop it altogether. About 1/2 to 1% of people in the world have an extra hole next to their ears that serves no clear purpose. And it is pretty useless, although not dangerous either. It's just a sign that your ancestors used to have gills. According to estimations, only about 6% of the world's population can solve the Rubik's Cube. Despite it being just a skill like any other, most of us have to learn it, either by watching tutorials on the web or asking someone for help. And only a small percentage of people can actually solve it on their own. If you're one of them, you're a truly rare individual. Raising your eyebrows in surprise is a common thing, and raising just one to express skepticism isn't rare either. But it depends on which eyebrow you usually raise. If you can do this trick with either eyebrow, you're actually unique. Since your eyebrows are controlled by muscles, you can train yourself to raise either of them at will. But it often takes time and conscious effort. Moving your ears is about the same. Not so many people can do it. and there are even fewer of those who can wiggle just one ear instead of both. It's an ancient feature that dates back to our primate ancestors who used their ears to control their surroundings. And of course, it's still present in most mammals. Now, while most people around the world are right-handed, being a lefty puts you in a minority. That's not surprising. But a really remarkable thing is ambidexterity. Only about 1% of the world's population can use both their hands equally well, meaning they could hold a spoon, pick their nose, or write in their notebook switching hands with no trouble at all. How useful would that be? So, when someone is lying, their nose gives it away. And no, it does not grow longer. You haven't seen mine. It turns out that when a person lies, the temperature around their nose, as well as the inner corners of their eyes, rises. So, imagine you're on a first date, and the person tells you something hard to believe. You whip out your thermometer and take the temperature of their nose. Then they take your temperature, and back and forth it goes all night long. Actually, there are better things to do, but I'm not going to spoil it for you. Women's hearts beat faster than men's. The average male's heart rate is between 70 and 72 beats per minute. At the same time, the average for women is between 78 and 82 beats. This is because women's hearts are generally smaller than men's. The female heart pumps less blood with each beat, so it needs to work a little harder to keep up with the male's. Your lungs are one of the largest organs in your body. Their total surface area is almost the same as a tennis court. And the total length of the airways running through them is similar to the distance from Chicago to Las Vegas. And all this manages to fit inside your body. Now, nerve impulses your brain sends travels at a speed of around 170 miles per hour. That's as fast as a high-speed train. The amount of food consumed by the average human in their lifetime weighs as much as 8 Asian elephants. It's unsurprising that we spend around 4 years of our life eating. Ooh, tongue twister. 8 Asian elephants, 8 Asian elephants. Now, we shed our skin as it's actually food for fungi, bacteria, and other stuff we definitely want to stay away from. We get rid of around 600,000 particles of skin every hour. That's why they call me Dusty. Your eyes get their color from a pigment called melanin. Brown-eyed people have more melanin than those with green eyes. The blood in your body travels 4 miles per hour, and it reaches your brain in just a few seconds. Some people can hear the sounds of their eyeballs moving. Ooh. It's a rare condition called canal dehiscence syndrome. It causes every single sound inside the body to be amplified. One man described it as hearing his eyes scratching like sandpaper every time they moved in their sockets. Wow. Then I guess watching a tennis match must get really loud. When you see a person smiling at you, you know how it feels, which can make you do the same. The same is with yawning. It's also some sort of unconscious way our brain makes social bonds with others that are yawning. Wisdom teeth used to have an important role. They were the third set of molars we used to mash meat and other firm food in our mouths. When our brains got bigger and we started eating softer food, jawbone structure changed, which means we didn't need wisdom teeth anymore. And that's why we've dumbed down. Nah, that's not why. When you're awake, your brain produces electricity. The actual amount is between 15 to 25 watts. That's enough to power an LED light. The electricity comes from the brain delivering millions of messages around the body every single second. These messages are how your brain tells your arms to move, for example. Think of your body as a super speedy highway for electrical signals. Your teeth are the only part of your body that can't repair itself. That's why dentists were created. But the enamel they're covered with is one of the toughest things in the human body. Now, scientists have noticed that people with bigger pupils are better at problem solving. Bigger pupilled individuals, yes, that is a legit word, can also focus better and ignore distractions, huh? Even their memory is sharper. We don't know the reasons for the phenomenon yet, but many people think it's because the pupil is linked to a spot in the brain that initiates your mental abilities. What? Humans can use echolocation just like whales or bats. Some blind people can get information about their surroundings in some sort of flashes in 3D perspective and have a strong sense of texture and density. They get information with sound waves. Our brains process those differently than light waves. Echolocation uses certain brain parts sighted people use for vision. Your skeletal cells never stop regenerating. That's why you get a new skeleton every 10 years or so. This process slows down with age, and the regeneration takes longer. That's one of the main reasons why bones become thinner. You must have heard of snakes shedding their skin. But humans do it too. Your skin's outer layer sheds every 2 to 4 weeks. That adds up to roughly 2 pounds of skin every year. That's the same weight as that of a pineapple. Ew. The enamel of our teeth is the hardest substance in the human body. 96% of it consists of minerals. Now, you'd have to stand for way more than 2 hours to burn the same amount of energy as you do in just 30 minutes of walking. The cornea of your eye is the only part of your body with no blood flow at all. It only gets oxygen. Your tongue is the only muscle with ends not connected to bone. Other muscles join 2 bones at both ends because that's how we pull and make a motion. The tongue is connected to the hyoid bone on one end, which is part of the neck, but there's nothing on the other side. Your sense of smell is the only one that goes directly to the part of the brain that controls your emotions and memories. Did I mention your pancreas? Your pancreas contains taste receptor cells that allow it to detect not only sugar but artificial sweeteners too. It uses the taste data to balance out hormones. Somebody actually counted this, and you swallow 600 times a day, once every minute when you're awake, and around 3 times per hour while sleeping. The average person has 10,000 taste buds. But as they get older, some taste buds are not replaced. An older person may have just 5,000 working buds, so they have to work harder or something. Eventually, human body hair may disappear. It used to protect us from severe weather conditions, but now we have clothes and umbrellas to do that. Most hair on the human body no longer serves any function. That's excluding our eyebrows and eyelashes, which protect our eyes from sweat and other nasty things dripping in. By the way, we're already halfway to losing all our hair. Humans used to be completely covered in it, which made us look as furry as gorillas. You have 5 million hair follicles on your body, and only 100,000 of them on your head. Hair grows ½ an inch every month, so a 70-year-old person that never got a haircut would have hair as long as a telephone pole. There's a newly discovered type of brain cells crucial for visual search. They're called target cells. Without their help, you wouldn't be able to spot an acquaintance in a crowd or your dog in the park. Interestingly, target cells don't care what the thing you're searching for looks like. All they want to know is whether an object is your target or not. You have around 3 million sweat glands in your body. Many of them are on the soles of your feet and on your palms, forehead, armpits, and cheeks. You get red eyes in photos because when the camera flash goes off, your pupils don't have enough time to constrict. A large burst of light reaches your retina and it bounces back. Food doesn't need gravity to get to your stomach. Your muscles constrict and relax to push it down. But birds need gravity to swallow. Unlike most other animals, we're walking on 2 legs, so we needed extra protection for the head directly exposed to the sun. That's why we have head hair. It also helps us retain heat at night. Our brain may not be big compared to the rest of the body, but it's always active, which produces heat, so the head hair insulates that area. When you blink, you're giving your brain a chance to do a micro nap and recharge. You blink between 20 to 30,000 times a day, which means you walk around with closed eyes around 10% of your waking hours. Your hair knows when you sleep. There are genes that regulate your body clock, and they're placed in the cells of hair follicles. That means scientists can tell if you're a morning bird or a late owl studying your hair. Your nails grow faster today than before. Studies from the 50s and the 70s say nails were growing slower, almost a quarter. Scientists believe it's because we eat more proteins these days, or we're just not chewing them as much.
Your dog doesn't actually have a stronger sense of smell than you do. People often talk about how dogs have a superior sense of smell, and this probably started when a researcher from the 19th century, Paul Broca, marked humans as non-smellers. No one ever provided sensory testing to support this theory, but people still believed in it for a long time. The truth is, different types of animals can identify different kinds of scents. There was an experiment done where human volunteers needed to track a scent. Researchers dipped twine in chocolate essence and then zigzagged it all across a grassy field. Volunteers weren't allowed to use other senses. For example, they were ear-muffed and blindfolded. They even wore thick gloves and knee pads. The conclusion they came to is that while we are not as effective as dogs, we can follow a scent trail and become way better if we practice. Interestingly, humans are more sensitive to certain smells compared to dogs, like fruit or flowers. This is because the evolution of dogs didn't require them to sharpen their sense of smell for these types of odors. A TV screen won't ruin your eyesight. At least, there's no evidence that looking at a TV screen can really hurt your eyes. It's the same for phone or computer screens. Looking at them may lead to eye strain or fatigue, but in most cases, it's nothing you can't ease with proper rest. That doesn't mean watching TV or staring at your phone for too long doesn't have negative consequences in other parts of your life, like reduced concentration and lack of socialization, among many other things. Being able to roll your tongue is not really a genetic trait, even though biology teachers often say this gift is based on a dominant gene. There was a study that showed 7 out of 33 twins who didn't actually share this feature. Identical twins share the same genes, which implies that they should share this trait too. But they don't, which means genes are most likely not the factor that decides if you'll be able to roll your tongue. And this myth still exists, even though it was debunked over 6 decades ago. You're going to catch a cold if you go outside with wet hair is yet another myth. To actually catch a cold, we need to have a virus inside of our body. Also, wet hair is not something that makes you more attractive to the various germs lurking around you. People mostly believe this is true because they A. heard it from their parents, and B. associate going outside with your hair being wet with getting sick because you're generally more exposed to germs when you're outside. There are no truly double-jointed people. Some individuals have certain parts of their bodies that are very flexible, so they can, for example, touch their chin with their elbow or bend their fingers backward. We often call these people double-jointed, like the secret is in them having an extra hinge somewhere. Well, it's not true. They have single joints, but they may have bones with oddly shaped ends, or their connective tissue may be very pliable. It seems the appendix, as in the organ, is useful after all, despite its poor reputation as a useless intestinal tube that pretty much goes nowhere. It seems the appendix is actually a reservoir for bacteria, but a good and helpful one. It stores microbes that assist our body when it's fighting certain problems and illnesses. In the early stage of our life, the appendix also helped us with the process of forming white blood cells, together with certain types of antibodies. Hey, do you know where the stomach is? Sounds easy, right? But it's probably not where you think. Most people believe it lurks somewhere in the area behind the belly button. In reality, it's a bit higher in the abdomen, sitting on top of the rest of the gut. Here's how you can find it. Look for the point where your lower ribs meet in the middle. Now go down approximately 3 finger widths, and then 3 to your left. Now you're supposed to be right over the center of your stomach. You don't have taste sections on your tongue. The tongue map probably showed up at the beginning of the 20th century because scientists found minute differences in how strong a taste had to be in different areas inside the human mouth to actually register. This study created a myth that each part of the tongue was responsible for different tastes. In reality, all types of taste buds are spread across all areas of your mouth, and they can detect each taste. This includes umami too, which is now accepted along with the usual four: sweet, salty, bitter, and sour. We don't only use 10% of our brain. We use way more, even when we're sleeping. Scientists tested this statement, and one of the methods they used was measuring activity in the brain while a person was performing various tasks. Results have shown we use most of our brain most of the time. The exact percentage varies from person to person, depending on what they're doing. Plus, it's not possible to monitor every single one of our brain cells. There are billions of them after all, so you can't know the exact number of active ones at any given time. When asleep, your frontal cortex, the part responsible for, let's say, higher-level thinking, and certain areas that help you sense your surroundings are still working. Humans don't just have 5 senses: hearing, taste, touch, sight, and smell. This idea originated from Aristotle, a famous Greek philosopher, who said that there was a sense organ for every sense: eyes for seeing, a tongue for tasting, and so on. But that was thousands of years ago, and he was missing the vestibular system, a key sense organ. The vestibular system is the apparatus of the inner ear that our body uses to stay in balance. Not every sense requires its own sense organ, just a different type of sensory receptor. For example, your skin alone has 4 different receptors for temperature, touch, pain, and proprioception. Proprioception is body awareness, which means that even if you move your arm behind your back, you still know it's there. Something an octopus, for example, doesn't know. So, saying we have 33 senses could be closer to the truth, not 5. These include senses of balance, temperature, thirst, and many more we need to survive. If you like cracking your knuckles from time to time, no need to worry. The whole idea that it increases risks for potential knuckle problems perhaps makes sense in the first place because that's what happens when you constantly put pressure on your joints over the years. The satisfying sound you hear happens because of bubbles bursting in the fluid that actually lubricates your joints, called synovial fluid. If you eat a big meal, you can still go swimming. You won't get cramps. The idea behind this misconception is eating a heavy meal will increase the amount of blood flow to your stomach. That way, blood won't go to your muscles, which will potentially cause cramps if you go swimming. The truth is, you probably won't feel that comfortable swimming immediately after eating a large meal, but you're safe to go if you really want to. It's even recommended to have a small snack that's rich in carbs not long before your swimming session. This will boost your energy. When you shave your body hair, you don't have to worry about it growing back darker and thicker, because this is a myth. You may believe there are some changes in the color, thickness, or growth rate of the hair. That's because after you shave, you give the follicle a blunt tip, which may look or feel darker and rougher than it was before. But that's just a perception trick. You'll see that once your hair grows in again, it will be the same as before. It's a myth that we lose a disproportionate amount of body heat through our heads. You may feel like that because our head, chest, and face are definitely more sensitive when it comes to changes in temperature. In reality, you'd be just as cold if you went out without a hat as if you weren't wearing pants. You probably feel like you're losing heat through your head because it's often one of those parts that we leave uncovered when going out. No need to worry if you wake up a sleepwalker. You're not going to seriously harm them by doing so. If you startle one, they can be quite disoriented and may have a confused reaction. Sometimes it's better to do that than to let a sleepwalker get up and start doing certain things that they shouldn't be doing while sleeping, like cooking or driving. Or you could just show them the way back to bed. The cornea is the only part of your body with living cells that doesn't have blood vessels. It gets nutrients and oxygen directly from the tear fluid on the outside, and the thick watery substance you have between the cornea on the inside, and also from the nerve fibers connected to the cornea. That's why contact lenses used to be a potential issue. The older ones were reducing oxygen supply, since the cornea mostly gets oxygen from the outside. This problem was solved, or at least reduced, when silicone hydrogel lenses came to the market. Some other parts of your body with no blood vessels are your nails, hair, outer skin layers, and tooth enamel. Did you notice your sweat sometimes smells of onions after your workout? You have nothing to worry about. There are 2 types of sweat glands in your skin. The first kind of glands are located on certain areas of your body, like the groin region and the armpits. They produce a specific oily fluid, which is a response to certain emotional experiences. Another type of sweat gland is way more common. They're distributed all over your body and are responsible for the specific sweat you get after the workout. The sweat cools your body down as it evaporates from your skin. It's 99% water, so it's practically odorless. Well, at least when it first leaves the pores and comes to the surface of your skin. But there are many types of bacteria on the human skin, and they feed on the nutrients in that sweat, together with skin flakes. One of the byproducts of this is specific chemicals, and their smell can sometimes strongly remind you of onion. You may have noticed you produce more saliva when you go for a run, especially if it's a short jog in cold weather. But if you're running a marathon and it's a nice warm day outside, you'll produce less saliva. It's your body trying to offset the drying effect, since you breathe through your mouth way more. But your body becomes more dehydrated over longer periods, which is why it's trying to conserve water by reducing saliva production. Every training you do, no matter how intensive it is, also makes you secrete more of a specific type of protein. It makes the saliva more viscous and sticky, which is why you may feel like your mouth is dry way more after your workout. Humans see the world 15 seconds out of date, which means your brain constantly keeps you a little bit in the past. This way, it helps you stabilize your vision of the world around you. Your eyes receive a huge amount of visual information. Yep, literally millions of colors, shapes, and ever-changing motion wherever you turn. It's not an easy task for your brain to process all that. The visual world alters all the time because of changes in viewpoint, light, and the rest of the outer factors. Your visual input changes because you need to blink. Plus, your head, eyes, and your entire body are always in some sort of motion. Your brain has to establish a mechanism that can create illusory stability. It automatically smooths your visual input. It doesn't analyze every little visual snapshot. It's like a time machine. You actually perceive an average of things you saw in the past 15 seconds at any given moment. The brain pulls together objects so they appear more similar to each other. That's why it tricks you into believing you're in stable surroundings. If your brain kept you updated in real time, the world would feel like a very, very chaotic place with constant changes in movement, light, and shadow, which would probably feel like you were hallucinating all the time. Your bones are really strong, but your teeth, which we also consider as part of the skeletal system, are even stronger. That's because of the enamel, the hard outer layer of your tooth. The enamel keeps the tissue and the delicate nerves inside your teeth safe. You're basically burning calories while you're thinking. When you rest and don't engage in any particular activity except for the basics, which includes digesting, breathing, and keeping yourself warm, it's the stage where your brain uses up to 20 to 25% of the total energy of your body. That means your body will burn around 350 to 450 calories per day, while pretty much doing nothing. We're not the only ones in the animal kingdom with such a mechanism. Some small mammals, like the minuscule pygmy marmoset and the tiny tree shrew, devote the same percentage of their total body energy to their brain. Most of the energy the brain burns is to help its cells, the neurons, to communicate with each other. They do it via chemical signals the brain transmits across synapses, those special cell structures. So, the brain directs a lot of energy towards synapses in order to make them work. Your brain never really rests. Even when you're sleeping, certain parts are active. So, your brain needs its fuel to work. and you're basically burning calories in your sleep. The more demanding mental tasks you take throughout the day, the more calories you burn. So, if you skip today's workout, solve some Sudoku. Do you like to rush with your ice cream? Sometimes it pays off, but if you do it often, you must know the feeling of brain freeze pretty well. It's a pretty intense and uncomfortable feeling that comes from the front or sides of your head right after you drink or eat something cold, such as a slushy drink, ice cream, or an ice pop. Some people even go through a similar sensation whenever they're exposed to cold air. Scientists are still not sure exactly why this happens, but one of the theories is the cold substance stimulates a cluster of nerves located at the back of the palate. Another theory says the blood vessels in the roof of the mouth and sinuses quickly constrict because the temperature in your mouth drops before they dilate again. Brain freeze is not something dangerous that you should be seriously worried about. And no, hanging over the table, groaning, or clasping your head in your hands won't help much. Some people like to sleep a lot. Hey, guilty as charged. But some have a certain condition called familiar natural short sleepers, which means they're kind of immune to sleep deprivation. About 1% of our population has it. They can fall short on sleep and feel pretty good about it. They're fine with sleeping for 6 hours per night. This amount would wreck the majority of people after a couple of nights. The human eye normally has 3 cones. That means we can recognize approximately 1 million different shades in the green, red, and blue spectrums of colors. But there are some people with a rare condition, so-called tetrachromats, that have 4 cones in their eyes. This allows them to see ultraviolet shades, which means they can distinguish 100 million distinct colors. Did you know your skeleton is all wet? I mean, your entire body mostly consists of water, up to 60%. That fluid is not only in your organs, muscles, and skin, it's in your skeleton too. Your bone mass is almost 1/3 water. There's this amazing hidden network a human body holds inside. Blood vessels are really small, but if you could line them all up, you'd get something huge. Your entire body boasts a network of 60,000 miles of blood vessels. One of the ways to keep your network healthy is by eating right. Have you ever wondered why our distant relatives, the primates, are so much stronger than us? In many ways, our bodies are very similar. Look at the chimp's muscle structure, for example. But our closest primate relatives are approximately 1.35 times stronger than us. The human body developed more slow-twitch muscle fibers compared to the rest of the primates. This type of muscle fiber is a less powerful one, but it lets us endure more than other primates and do things like foraging and hunting, activities that helped our distant ancestors to survive. That's also the reason why we can run a marathon. A monkey could never do it. But we'd still lose in a strength competition. Laughter is contagious. It's not just a metaphor. Researchers have found that strong emotions can make the brain activity of different people sink. Laughter is something science usually links with social creatures. People are almost 30 times more likely to laugh when in some social situations, hanging out with their friends or people they feel relaxed with. One of the theories says that you're probably going to join when you see your friend laughing because humans are empathetic beings. Your brain will release endorphins when you're laughing. These are special chemicals that make you feel safe and at ease. So we're not sure why exactly our laughter is contagious, but it feels really good, so... Join us on the bright side of life and laugh away. You wake up one morning, and while you're brushing your teeth, you notice a lump on the inside of your mouth, under your tongue. Immediately, you're concerned. You've never noticed this before? But not to worry. It's just torus mandibularis, a simple bony growth on the mandible of your mouth. If you have this extra bit of bone, you are part of the 40% of people with this anomaly. Although it can be more common depending on where you're from. For example, in the USA, this only occurs in 10% of the population. Bones are significant pieces within our bodies. We have 206 of them altogether. But some people may have an extra bone that they weren't expecting. We all have 12 pairs of ribs, equaling to 24 in total. However, 0.5% of people may have 25. The 25th is known as a cervical rib. Present from birth, it grows from the base of the neck, just above the collarbone. It can be on either side, as a fully formed rib, or just a thin strand of tissue fibers. There are some parts of our body that have remained with us throughout our evolution as a species, and some of us no longer share that same physical trait. The palmaris longus is a small tendon located in your wrist. By pressing the pads of your fourth finger and thumb, then clenching your wrist, the inside of your wrist will show the palmaris longus popping out. If this isn't visible, then you are part of a relatively small percentage that no longer possesses it. Lacking it has no effects on the strength of your grip, but being absent does give a decreased pinch strength in the fourth and fifth finger. It's believed that this muscle was actively used sometime in the evolutionary process of our species. It hasn't affected our bodies in any way, and it's merely a trait that some of us continue to have. It's also not dependent on either hand, regardless of which hand is dominant. Which hand do you use more often? If you're left-handed, you're part of the 10% club. And if you're ambidextrous, you're within the 1% to use both of your hands dominantly. Most ambidextrous people initially only use their left hand. Ambidexterity and left-handedness share the indication that they are using both sides of the brain. Right-handed people are generally dominant only to the left side of the brain. We all have tailbones, a reminder of our long story of evolution. We stopped using our tails around 25 million years ago. Although, while we are still growing as embryos, we go through the process of growing a tail, and after about 8 weeks, we lose it completely. There are some cases of humans being born with a tail. There are about 25 confirmed cases known to scientists. Those born with tails, though, won't have any real benefit, other than what the tailbone does for balance anyway. The tails have no function other than physically being there, as they have no bones. The tails only consist of nerves, vessels, and muscles. Do you find that you are a picky eater? Do you think that coriander tastes like soap? Or you can't stand pineapple on pizza? This may be due to what kind of taster you are. Up to 30% of people are considered super tasters and will experience different levels of enjoyment or disappointment from their foods. Food that is bitter to the super taster will likely be sweet to average tasters, who make up 40% of people. There are also 30% of people who are non-tasters and won't find anything too exciting. Do you have the ability to identify musical notes? About 1 in 10,000 people can flawlessly distinguish perfect pitch naturally. Although this doesn't necessarily mean that they will be the next big pop star. They're just able to easily identify a specific musical note upon listening to it. Our eye colors are so diverse. The difference in light exposure to eyes throughout the world determines how much melanin is produced, which helps create many different shades of color. Since migration has become more common over the past 100 years, the variations of shades of color are numerous. Your genes, of course, also playing a huge part. We could list hundreds of different shades of eye color to show how many variations there are, but we'll limit the distinct categories down to 6 main color groups to keep this brief. The vast majority of people have brown eyes. About 79% of the world's population share this eye color. Once, all humans only had the brown pigmentation, until around 6,000 to 10,000 years ago, when humans migrated to Northern Europe. A mutation occurred, helping the eyes to adapt to the change of light. Blue eyes became the most common of the mutated coloration, and all of them today can be traced back to one ancestor from Europe. Today, blue eyes make up around 10% of the human population. Amber and hazel eyes each take up 5% respectively. Gray eyes are up to 3%, and the rarest of eye colors are green ones, consisting of only 2%. Rarer still is heterochromia iridum, where both eyes are of different colors. It's inherited and also affected by other genetic factors. Only 1% of the human population have this incredibly rare attribute. Although blue eyes have become more common, they're only more prominent within areas where people contribute similar variants of genes, since blue eyes are a recessive trait. Just like red hair, which only occurs within up to 2% of the population. If you have red hair and blue eyes, you will be part of the smallest percentile for hair and eye variety that makes up only 0.17% of the human population. Although green, gray, and hazel eyes are less abundant than blue, their genes are more dominant. So, within the small pool of redheads, blue eyes are less likely to occur. The melanin that has helped mutate eye colors can also have other effects on the human body. A genetic mutation that affects the melanin occurs in 0.005% of people in the USA, creating albinism. The occurrence differs in many ways throughout the world, the same as the effects with eyes. In albinism, the pigment production is altered to distribute major cells that affect the coloring of the skin, the hair, and the eyes. Most people with albinism will have snow-white skin, snow-white hair, and their eyes are a pale blue-pinkish color, the pupil itself being red. The redness comes from the light reflecting off the vessels in the retina. There is another form of albinism which has a smaller amount of pigmentation, and the shade of skin and hair are slightly darker. Albinism occurs not only in humans, but practically all mammals, reptiles, and amphibians. Do you have a small hole at the front of your ear above the ear canal? This is the preauricular pit. During the first 6 weeks of a child's development, long before being born, the auricle, which is the external part of your ear, will develop. The preauricular pit forms when the auricle doesn't fully fuse. This occurs within less than 1% of humans. Although there's speculation that having this little hole is the remnant of gills that we once had from our seafaring ancestors, there's nothing solid to confirm this theory. There are some unique things we have that give us an advantage in everyday life. Some people carry a gene mutation of the DEC2 gene, also known in proper English as familial natural short sleepers. Essentially, it means people within this 1% only require about 6 hours of sleep each day. Most people will probably feel burned out after a day of this, but those lucky enough to be within this 1% will be sure to make the most out of their day. Have you ever looked at a picture and noticed that the color of something was different to what someone else can see? It may be that you have a rare ability to see more colors than everyone else, possibly seeing 100 million different kinds of shades. If you do, you're part of the rare group of people called tetrachromats, who have 4 cone cells in their eyes, unlike everyone else who has 3, and are identified as a trichromat. Studies are varied on who is part of this rare ocular phenomenon, though it's more prominent in females. It's suggested that up to 15% of women have this rare capability. Incredibly, it's an ability also shared with some species of birds, insects, fish, and other mammals.
Ay, ay, ay. About 6% of people can vibrate and rapidly shake their eyeballs back and forth. It doesn't mean something's not right with their eyes. It's just a unique trick they can perform. Good at parties, I suppose. Your bones are designed to be used a lot daily, and some of them can absorb 2 or even 3 times your body weight. That's impressive, but your teeth are even stronger. When you bite something, the teeth can exert incredible pressure, up to 200 pounds. By the way, the enamel is considered to be part of your skeletal system. Your stomach has a pretty incredible capacity, being able to hold up to half a gallon of liquid, a whole large bottle of Coke. It's pretty hard to estimate how much hard food you can squeeze into your stomach since the food is processed with your teeth before it gets inside. There's definitely not enough room for a turkey, but a good-sized chicken will probably fit it. Whenever you rotate your hand, the bones inside it actually intersect. Grab your hand and verify it. Yeah, not very useful. Now, show me where your stomach is. If you're pointing at your tummy, sorry, but it's wrong. It's up here, hidden between your ribs. Fun fact about bones. You know that your body is about 60% water, right? What's new here is that your bones are in this too. About 25% of the human bone mass is made up of water. Scientists believe that the appendix isn't here to stay. Nobody really knows why we need it, but some researchers claim it helped our ancestors process the tree bark they were eating. As it's no longer part of our daily diet, the appendix can disappear from our bodies without any consequences. A human eye has some resemblance to a car engine. They both need various liquids to perform properly. An engine needs gasoline, and an eye needs tears. In order to work well, the tears should be thoroughly distributed all over the eye. That's why we blink up to 20,000 times a day. So, a lid is a bit of a windshield washer. Almost all of our body is covered with hairs, even if we don't notice them. They grow even in the belly button. Their purpose is to catch lint. The only part of the human body that doesn't get any nutrients from blood is the cornea of the eye. Instead, it's fed by tears and fluid in the front of your eyes. If you never knew you had a personal bodyguard, look deeper. Your liver is your security guard, protecting you from toxins and many other things you don't want to have. It's also pretty indestructible and can even regenerate. When you blush, it means there's an increased blood flow in your body. Not only do your cheeks get somewhat red, but your stomach lining too. It's because it has plenty of blood vessels, and when there's more blood than usual, it turns red. Only about 43% of you is actually you. You're over 50% tiny little creatures that mainly live in your gut and other body parts without ever leaving it. Still, even though your own cells are fewer than microbial ones, there are, on average, about 100 trillion of them in you. Let's count them. You start. Your stomach has a lining replaced every 3 to 4 days. That's done to stop it from eating itself. The digestive acids we've got can be pretty damaging. One thing that surely rests while you're sleeping is your nose. You just won't smell anything nasty in your sleep. The thing is that your sense of smell basically deactivates at night. If there's some really terrible smell in your bedroom, you won't even be bothered. We can accidentally digest small objects, such as plastic items, glass, coins, and many other small objects. They pass their way through the digestive tract within 48 hours. Really, just trust me on this one. You have better things to do. Scientists used to believe we could distinguish about 10,000 smells. Nope. Recent research showed that people were able to distinguish more than 1 trillion smells. We also remember them better than anything else, and smells can even evoke some distant memories. We can digest tiny quantities of plastic, but the human digestive system can't really bear grass. Grazing animals have special teeth and several stomachs to process raw leaves and grass, while we have none of that stuff. But don't feel bad. Among mammals, only humans can always walk on 2 hind limbs and keep that posture for their entire lives. You might object that kangaroos or gorillas move in the same way, but the roos use their tail as a third leg, and gorillas use the help of their long arms to keep balance. The stomach is the most important defender of the immune system. Hydrochloric acid in our stomach kills dangerous food toxins, viruses, and bacteria that get in there with the food you eat. This acid can digest even the stomach itself, but the mucous membrane protects it. Body fat isn't just a nuisance. It acts as insulation material, energy reserve, and shock absorber. Your body sends the most fat into your waist region because that's where your internal organs are. If something happens to you, this layer of fat might as well protect your vitals from irreparable damage. We've got 2 really fast muscles. They control the eyelid closing. These are the fastest muscles in our body. Eyes are fragile and need protection. That's why, when the reflex is triggered, these muscles shut the eyes within about 100 milliseconds. That's not more than 0.1 second. We recognize only purple-blue, green-yellow, and yellow-red colors. Everything else is a combination of these 3. It's impossible to calculate how many of these combinations the human eye sees because every person has slight visual differences, but it's about 1 million combinations on average. Now, even if you brush your teeth twice a day and never forget about mouthwash, your mouth still stays one of the dirtiest parts of the human body. Ew. Millions of bacteria live inside it. The good news is that most of these bacteria are good for the body and protect it from bad bacteria and viruses. The second dirtiest place is the belly button, and it's probably because it's the first ignored place. The thing is, we don't really use them after we're born, so this forlorn area accumulates all kinds of germs, sweat, and dirt. The belly button has over 2,300 bacterial species, and it does need extra attention. You think you owe your strong handshake to all your strength workouts? Well, you're more likely to owe it to your pinky. Just kidding. Anyway, a pinky is the strongest finger out there. This humble finger is responsible for 50% of your hand strength. Still, the most used finger is the thumb. It takes to itself 40% of the hand's action. Well, it probably makes it the most important finger too. Two more humble helpers are your toes that carry about 40% of your weight. If you've ever heard that humans don't really need their toes, don't believe it. They're also the main pushers when you walk. Tomatoes have more genes than humans. This shouldn't concern you though, because it's not the number of genes that matters, but the complexity of their connections. Nails don't only help us catch random objects and peel the stickers off. If you didn't have a rigid structure against which to press, you wouldn't be able to judge how firmly to hold anything. Our hair color is easily explained by genes. There are not more than 2% of people with naturally red hair. They're followed by blondes, about 3%, and all the varieties of brown shades, only about 11%. The vast majority goes to black hair, including very dark brown. Yeah, your hair can stop growing at a certain length. A hair usually grows from 2 to 7 years, so usually it doesn't exceed 42 inches. Well, tell that to this gal from China who broke all the hair records with the longest hair ever. In 2004, her hair was 18 feet 5.5 inches long. Rapunzel, where have you been, girl? When we laugh, think, look at something, dream, move, or do some other activity with our body, small electrical and chemical signals run between neurons along those connections. Our brain is always active, sometimes even more when we're sleeping than when we're awake. And by that, neurons make and send more information than all the phones in the whole world. You're sitting somewhere outside and an insect lands on your leg. Your skin has sensory neurons and they quickly send the message to your brain at an impressive speed, 150 miles per hour. The brain sends back the message to your leg to shake the insect off very fast, and the speed that information travels is even bigger, 200 miles per hour. Now, toenails grow around 4 times slower than your fingernails. This happens because we do more things with our hands compared to feet, which is why we cause more trauma to our fingernails. Now, there's a high possibility your right hand has different types of microbes than the left one. This happens because they cover our skin from head to toe, and their variety depends on our skin thickness, humidity, temperature, texture, and chemistry, which can change as we use our right and left hands in different ways. Our nails and hair are made of keratin, which is a material we find in certain body parts of some other animals as well. For instance, claws, hooves, horns, wool, fur, feathers, beaks, turtle shells, and porcupine quills. Our body is made of stardust. Really? The more complex elements in our body can only come about through supernovas. The first stars were just gassy lumps that were drawn together and, at some point, started the process of combustion. This finally led to a nuclear reaction in its center. Stars that were there right after the Big Bang were over 50 times bigger than our Sun is now. Inside of them, there was a constant process of making the elements, and those large stars were burning their fuel faster. Most of the elements in the human body were formed in those stars over billions of years, so you could realistically say that part of you is immortal. Cool, huh? Now, if you don't want to sneeze, press the skin on the bridge of your nose with your fingers. When you do it, your brain receives an alarm signal. Very quickly, it puts the brakes on all other processes, including the sneezing reflex. By the way, the longest sneezing fit was recorded in 1981. Sorry. It lasted for 976 days. During this time, a woman from the UK sneezed more than 1,000,000 times. The part of your brain that's responsible for vision is in the back of your head. Interestingly, the right side of your brain controls the vision on the left side and vice versa. If you're in some loud place, for example in a club or at a concert, close your ears to better hear your friends. Push the tragus, the pointed skin-covered cartilage in front of the ear canal, into your ear. Then turn this ear toward your friend. If you feel anxious, press your fingers into a fist with your thumb sticking out and slowly blow on this finger. If you can't stop hiccups, put an ice cube on your tongue, or you can close your ears with your palms and drink a glass of water through a straw in one breath. Pulling the tip of your tongue or raising your arms toward the ceiling can also be helpful. On average, when a person snores, the sound doesn't get louder than 60 decibels. That's as loud as a regular conversation. But sometimes the noise levels can reach 80 decibels. That's as loud as a working food blender. If you want to wake up faster, hold your breath for some time. When you do it, your heart starts beating more rapidly, and your body turns on the active mode. But don't overdo it. If you wake up too abruptly, you'll put unnecessary stress on your heart. If you feel moody, hold a pencil between your teeth. The muscles involved in smiling will get down to work. This will send special impulses to your brain, and it'll start producing endorphins. In no time, your smile will become much more sincere. Right-handed people tend to chew most of their food on the right side of their mouths, and those who are left-handed use their left side more. The smell of rosemary can help you activate your super memory. Whenever you need to learn something by heart, do it while lying down in bed with a sprig of rosemary nearby. It'll help you memorize the info more effectively and faster. If your leg has fallen asleep, shake your head. In about a minute, you'll realize that your muscles have relaxed, and the pins and needles sensation has passed. The muscles that help your eyes focus make around 100,000 movements a day. If you want to make your leg muscles move as much, you'll need to walk 50 miles. Déjà vu might actually be something like a brain processing lag. There's a theory claiming it might happen when your brain is moving information from one part to another. If there's even the tiniest delay in that process, your brain will get the same information twice. In this case, it'll process it as an event that happened before. Out of all those people who can move their ears, only 30% can move just one ear. Your mouth burns when you're snacking on pineapple because while you're eating this fruit, it's eating you back. Pineapple is the only known food that contains bromelain. That's an enzyme that breaks down proteins. Luckily, your stomach acid knows how to deal with the offending enzyme. If you have a tickle in your throat, scratch your ear. This stimulates a nerve, which results in a muscle spasm in your throat. And in no time, the tickle is gone. Surprisingly, you burn more calories when you're sleeping than when you're watching TV. Ask your friend to sit down on a chair and put your index finger on their forehead. Then tell them to stand up without using their hands. They won't be able to do it. Just like salamanders regrow their tails, humans might be able to regenerate cartilage. That's rubber-like stuff surrounding your joints. Scientists have recently discovered that cartilage could repair itself. This process is likely to be the most effective at the ankle, not that effective in the knee, and the least effective in the hip. If you're lying in bed and suddenly experience vertigo, place one of your feet on the floor. Your brain will receive the information that you're standing on something firm, and the unpleasant sensation will pass. Only 30% of people can flare their nostrils. If someone is tapping you on the back while you're hugging, they're non-verbally asking you to let go. People with a single palmar crease have just one line running across their palm. Such people are very rare, just 1.5% of the world's population. Most people have two palmar creases. Men are more likely to have a single palmar crease than women. In most cases, it runs in families. Your taste buds have a very short life cycle. They live for no longer than 10 to 14 days. Your lips are hundreds of times more sensitive than your fingertips. Your skin wrinkles when you stay in the water for too long, but it doesn't happen because it absorbs water. In reality, wrinkled fingers and toes provide you with a better grip. Studies have proved that sneezing is your nose's way to reset. A sneeze reboots the cells that line the insides of your nose. They're called cilia. If a person has anosmia, which is also called smell blindness, they don't distinguish and detect smells. The amount of food you consume in your lifetime will weigh as much as 8 Asian elephants. No wonder that people spend almost 4 years of their life eating. Your skin analyzes 1 million bits of data per second. Your ears and nose process 100,000 bits each. And your tongue is the least productive. It analyzes just 1,000 bits. Multitasking is kind of impossible. What we consider multitasking is actually just our brain switching between different tasks really fast. Unfortunately, in this case, people tend to make mistakes much more often. Plus, you may need twice as much time to do a task as usual. On the other hand, when you're engaged in some physical activity you've done many times before, you can perform a mental task too. That's why you can easily jog or take a shower and think about problems at work. If you see someone constantly fixing their sleeves, they likely feel very nervous, and fiddling with something is a self-soothing technique. You can check how unique you are by chewing on a sprig of cilantro. For some people, this herb may taste similar to soap because the plant contains a chemical used in soap making. But only 4 to 14% of the world's population have special genes that can detect it. Are you one of them? A grown-up person uses around 200 muscles to make just one step. Your eyes never stop moving while taking in visual information. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to see the whole picture. These movements go unnoticed because your brain is a great video editor. It stabilizes the images and connects tons of fragments into one smooth video. Your stomach gets a totally new lining every 3 to 4 days. That's how your body prevents the stomach from digesting itself. When a person lies, the temperature around their nose and in the inner corners of their eyes rises. This phenomenon is known as the Pinocchio effect. The liver is the only human organ that can regenerate completely. Even if it's a mere 25% of the original liver weight, the organ can get back to its full size. Synesthesia is an unusual and rare ability. People who have it can taste music or hear colors, but only 1 in every 2,000 people has it. These days, our finger and toenails grow faster than they did half a century ago. It might be because people eat more proteins today. You start feeling thirsty once your water loss reaches 1% of your body weight. More than 5% and you may even faint. Water loss that exceeds 10% of the body weight, we'll just say that it doesn't end well. Your brain can generate more than 48 thoughts in under a minute. It's almost 3,000 thoughts per hour and more than 70,000 per day. Each person has around 150,000 hairs on their head. On average, every strand grows about a half an inch per month. If you combine the growth from each hair, it would measure the distance of 10 miles per year. If you get a leg cramp, pull your big toe toward yourself. This will stretch your muscles and reduce the spasm. People have bacteria that can produce electricity living in their intestines. These bacteria give off electrons, which creates tiny electrical currents. This might be the bacteria's way to generate energy. Maybe turn on some lights. Hey, it's dark in there. By the end of their life, the average person can recall up to 150 trillion pieces of information. If you brush your teeth before eating or drinking something, you might end up damaging your taste buds. That's because most kinds of toothpaste contain 2 chemicals, sodium lauryl ether sulfate and sodium lauryl sulfate. that decrease your ability to taste sweet things and increase your ability to taste bitter food. The DEC2 gene mutation allows people to have just a few hours of sleep a night and still feel great. They don't get tired and never sleep in. Boy, where do I get one of those? On average, these people wake up at 4 or 5 a.m. Only up to 5% of the world's population has this feature. Only humans can produce emotional tears. Other living beings cry to lubricate their eyes. Women have more taste buds on their tongues than men do. It might be one of the reasons why 35% of ladies are super tasters, people who feel flavors more strongly than others, and only 15% of guys can boast the same ability. It's hard for people to recognize someone they know if, in a photo, this person doesn't have eyebrows. This proves that eyebrows are more important for face recognition than eyes. When clasping their hands, 50% of people put their right thumb above the left one. 49% of people position their left thumb over the right. And only 1% of people place their thumbs next to each other. Your brain contains more than 86 billion nerve cells, which are joined with one another by 100 trillion connections. That's way more than the number of stars in our home Milky Way galaxy. And if you decided to count all those numerous nerve cells, it would take you up to 3,000 years. A tremendous waste of time. Your brain's memory capacity equals 4 terabytes on a hard drive. That's more than 8 million photos. You're likely to keep in memory up to 10,000 different faces. This number is different from person to person, but the average is 5,000. It doesn't mean you can put a name to each face. It's only about recognizing the features. If you walked in the same direction for 12 hours a day, you would need around 800 days to travel around the globe. The Bajau is a group of nomadic people that live in the waters surrounding the Philippines, Indonesia, and Malaysia. Thanks to a rare DNA mutation, they can stay underwater for up to 13 minutes. They also dive to a depth of 200 feet. Blue cheese can affect your dreams, making them more vivid. Your ears might pop or even hurt when you are on an airplane. You can solve this problem by simply chewing some gum. This opens up the eustachian tube, a small passage that connects your throat and your middle ear. Opening this passage up helps equalize the pressure in your ears and puts an end to the popping. You can also yawn to open up the eustachian tube. Your dreams are a complex mix of your imagination, memories, and knowledge. The average person has from 4 to 7 dreams every night, but not all people remember them. Even if fingerprints get badly damaged, they grow back with their original pattern. If you have to deal with complaining customers, put a mirror behind your back. When an angry person approaches you, they'll see themselves in the mirror. This will prevent them from acting rudely. No one likes seeing themselves this way. Your feet are likely to become bigger with time. When people grow older, ligaments and tendons in their feet weaken. This makes the arches flatter, and feet become wider and longer. Only 3% of people in the world have lines that form the letters X on both their palms. In many cultures, this is believed to be a sign of a strong personality. The human brain is 73% water, just like your heart. That's why if your brain loses even 2% of liquid, you start feeling exhausted. This also makes your memory worse, shortens your attention span, and puts a dampener on your mood. In most people, their height is the same as their arm span. Check it out. A particular gene mutation results in super dense bones that are almost impossible to break. They're several times tougher than the average person's bones. People with this mutation also have skin that is less prone to aging. You might have noticed little dots traveling in squiggly lines when you're looking at a bright light or blue sky. They're usually only visible for a second or two. Sometimes they look like tiny worms. Well, those are your white blood cells moving through the capillaries in front of the retina, the light-sensitive tissue at the back of your eyes. Most people don't even notice the dots unless you ask them to pay attention. If someone is listening to you with their eyebrows raised, they're likely genuinely interested in your story. If you decided to uncoil the human DNA, the whole thing would stretch for 10 billion miles. That's 40,000 times the distance between Earth and the Moon. Human teeth are almost as strong as those of a shark. The enamel of your teeth, that's the outer layer, is the hardest substance in your entire body. Your nostrils don't work with the same efficiency all the time. When you breathe, one nostril does most of the work. They switch every couple of hours. Your right ear is more responsive to speech, and your left ear is better at perceiving music. Researchers think that's because it's your left hemisphere that processes speech, while the right one deals with music and other creative functions. Your lips look red because of a great number of tiny blood capillaries right below the skin. While enjoying your favorite cold food or beverage, you might suddenly get a painful brain freeze. This happens because the nerves at the roof of your mouth get frozen. They send signals to your brain asking it to please stop eating such cold stuff. But you can overcome this unpleasant sensation by pressing your tongue against the roof of your mouth. Do it as hard as you can. The pain will soon disappear. Your lips don't sweat because there are no sweat glands there. They also have no glands producing a special protective film that keeps your skin hydrated. That's why your lips are so vulnerable to the sun, wind, and cold. They also dry out faster than other body parts. You wouldn't be able to taste food if your body didn't produce saliva. Your taste buds have special receptors that recognize different flavors. But without some liquid, flavors won't bind to the molecules of these receptors. There are only a few cells in your body that will stay with you throughout your entire life. Those are the cells in the inner lens of your eye, the muscle cells of your heart, and the neurons of your cerebral cortex. That's a fancy word for the outer layers of your brain. Millennials are people who are now between 25 and 40 years old, and they tend to be more forgetful than older people. The main reason for this phenomenon is higher levels of stress these folks have. People with albinism have little to no melanin. That's the pigment that gives color to your hair, skin, and eyes. It's a rare condition. In the U.S., only 1 in 18,000 to 20,000 people is born with albinism. But there's also ocular albinism, and it's even rarer. Experts think only 1 in 50,000 people has ocular albinism. During just one day, the blood in your body travels over 12,000 miles. That's half as long as the distance around Earth. Almost 25% of your body's cholesterol is in your brain. This substance is crucial for your memory and learning abilities. But the blood-brain barrier doesn't allow your brain cells to get cholesterol from the blood. That's why your brain produces its own kind of cholesterol. Paradoxically, even though your teeth are a part of the skeletal system, they don't count as bones. It might be because they, sadly, can't regenerate. But if a bone is broken, it heals on its own by producing new bone cells. Your eyes can see something for a mere 13 milliseconds, and it'll be enough time for your brain to process the image. For comparison, the average blink lasts from 100 to 400 milliseconds. Bright sunlight makes 17 to 35% of people sneeze. This phenomenon is called the photic sneeze reflex. Your fingers are extremely sensitive. They can feel objects that are no bigger than the width of your hair. If your finger was the size of Earth, you'd still feel the difference between cars and houses. If there was a calorie chart in a restaurant, people tend to order less healthy and more high-calorie food. They compare the difference between, let's say, a burger and a large serving of Caesar salad, and notice that it isn't that big. And since the burger seems to be more filling, that's what they order. But when people don't know that a big portion of salad contains almost as many calories as the burger, they pick a healthier option. The human body is this perfectly balanced machine, right? Well, not when I'm using it. Normally, all its parts work seamlessly together to keep us thriving and, well, alive. Each of our organs is essential for our day-to-day activities, from breathing, walking, talking, and coming up with bright ideas that push humanity forward. But are they really essential? Do we really need all those body parts? Or are some of them just ancient relics that we just got stuck with in this weird game of evolution? Take wisdom teeth, for example. Nah, somebody already took mine. Yeah, they're those pairs of teeth stuck in the back of your mouth you often have to go to the dentist for. They're also known as third molars, and while they can be used to chew food, a lot of people think they're just unnecessary. And get this, around 22% of people worldwide don't even have all four of them. When they do grow in, they're the most likely to become impacted, which means they get stuck in the jawbone sideways and can't properly come through the gums. It's all because our jaws are often too small to accommodate these extra guys. Some smart scientists think that's because we've evolved to have smaller jaws over time. Recent evidence also shows that what we eat as kids might also be to blame, but it's hard to know for sure. Apparently, munching on hard-to-chew foods like raw veggies and nuts can actually stimulate jaw growth, while eating soft processed foods can kinda stunt it. And that leaves little space for our back teeth to come in and, do their thing. Will they disappear altogether in the future? I guess we human mammals will just have to wait and see. Now let's talk about the vomeral nasal organ, or as I like to call it, the nose's secret instrument. Ooh. You see, rodents and other mammals have this awesome ability to communicate with each other using chemical signals called pheromones. And guess what? They have a special organ called the vomeral nasal organ, or VNO, that helps them detect these pheromones. Here's where it gets interesting. While most adult humans have something resembling a VNO in their nose, it turns out that it's basically a useless remnant. Neuroscientists even say that if you look at the anatomy of this organ, you won't see any cells that resemble those of similar organs from other mammals. Also, this organ in humans doesn't seem to be communicating with the brain either. Now, it's not all bad news. Even though the human VNO is pretty useless, it looks like it still might respond to some pheromones. Will humans keep this organ on their evolutionary to-do list? For now, I'd place it in the maybe pile. Now, here's a tale. Animals that feature tails need these structures for a lot of things. Some need it for balance, others for navigation, while some need it to attract potential partners. But did you know that when we're just a few weeks old in our mother's belly, we actually have tails too? That's right, we have a whole little tail complete with vertebrae. As we develop, that tail magically disappears and we're left with our trusty tailbone. Humans and apes are unique in that we don't have tails, unlike other primates. It's a mystery why apes lost their tails, but we can all agree that it makes us stand out in a crowd. However, once in a blue moon, a human is born with a little vestigial tail. Cute, right? Well, don't get too excited, because these tails don't have vertebrae and can sometimes be associated with a tricky condition of the spine. Either way, these tails are usually harmless and can be easily removed with a quick surgery. And let's be honest, it's not like we're going to miss it. After all, who needs a tail when you have arms and legs to get around? Plus, can you imagine trying to find pants that fit with a tail sticking out the back? Not a good look. There's little to no chance humans will end up needing tails in the future, so I'm guessing the tailbones are bye-bye in future generations. Humans also have a funny little fold of membrane in the inner corner of the eyes, called the plica semilunaris. It's basically what's left of a third eyelid, which is still found in some animals, like gorillas and other primates. But here's the funny thing. Even our close relatives, the chimpanzees, have this little fold that appears to be useless too. So we're not alone in this eye quirkiness. Speaking of unusual membranes, they serve a variety of functions in different animals, such as protecting the eye from dirt and moisture, or hiding the iris from predators. Some species can even see through their transparent membranes when they're underwater or underground. Now, the reasons why we humans lost our third eyelid is still a bit of a mystery. Maybe changes in our habitat and eye physiology made it unnecessary, or maybe we just evolved to be too cool for a third eyelid. Who knows? With or without vestigial organs, it's interesting to imagine what humans might look like in the future. Many organs have become obsolete because of our lifestyle changes. Care to have a peek into what we might look like in the future? And in the same vein, or artery, have you heard of the concept of text claw? It's where you spend so much time typing on your phone or laptop that your hand starts to cramp up like a claw. And that's just one of the physical changes that could happen to us if we don't take care of our bodies in this tech-heavy world. But it's not just our hands that are affected. We could end up with 90-degree elbows from constantly holding our devices at that angle, and even a smaller brain from all the distractions and information overload. Now, I know what you're thinking. We just can't give up technology and go back to the Stone Age. And you're right, we don't have to. But we do need to be aware of the potential negative effects and take steps to reduce their damage. That's why a team of designers put their creative efforts together to present Mindy, a future human whose body has physically changed due to the constant and never-ending use of smartphones, laptops, and other types of maniacal devices. While Mindy's exaggerated changes may not be in our future, the concerns behind them are real. So, what can we do? Well, one suggestion is to take regular breaks from our screens and stretch our legs a little. Maybe even encourage some office yoga or dance parties to get the blood flowing. We don't have to give up technology completely, but we do need to be mindful of its effects on our bodies and minds. Many years in the future, we might even get smaller in size. One scientist reckons that if we were smaller, our bodies would need less energy, which would come in super handy in our increasingly crowded planet. It's funny to think about how different our lives are now compared to when we were hunter-gatherers. Back then, we only had to interact with a handful of people each day. But now, remembering people's names is a super important trait, and it might even be something we grow to become better at. Or, technology might actually play a role in our evolution. Scientists believe that we could one day have implants in our brains that help us remember people's names. It's like having a biological phone book directly in your body. Wouldn't that be cool? Who knows? Maybe in the future, we'll even have visible technology as part of our appearance. Imagine having an artificial eye that can see different colors and visuals. And don't even get me started on what we might look like if we colonize Mars. With the lower gravity, our bodies could change in all sorts of ways. We might have longer arms and legs, or even insulating body hair like our Neanderthal ancestors. It's hard to pinpoint what we might look like in the future without very precise data to back the models up. But it's fair to say these changes will be interesting, to say the least. As for me, well, it's too late to say the least. I've said over 1,400 words here already. That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos